I'm Olivia Spangler.
I'm Annika Frankenberg.
I'm Mia Sangria.
And I'm Elena Flores. Racial inequality has been a prominent issue in the United States, seen first through slavery since the nation's founding in 1776, up until 1865 when it was finally abolished through the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Despite this, racial discrimination was seen again later on through laws legalizing segregation, also known as the Jim Crow laws. These regulations claim to provide separate but equal treatment of all races, but still kept people of color inferior to those in the white majority. It wasn't until 1964 that the Civil Rights Act was put into place, prohibiting discrimination of any form, including race. With these historically significant legal actions considered, at this point in time, over 50 years later, shouldn't America be free of racial prejudice?
Over the past 10 years, this leads to the question of, over the past 10 years, how has the progress of racial inequality within the justice system, this leads us to the question, how has there been progress of racial inequality in the criminal justice system over the past 10 years, specifically for African Americans?
Instead of the criminal justice system improving in America for African Americans, it has slowly declined in three prominent areas, such as the school-to-prison pipeline, court system biases, and police biases.
A solution that we have come up with is to enforce thorough screening procedures for people in power. These can include background checks, psychological evaluations, and monitoring social media presence.
This inequality is experienced early on in life, especially in the school system. School districts are drawn on the basis of property taxes and paid by the people within them. This isolates the poor of all races, although mostly minorities. It results in them being relegated to inferior schools. These schools have low-quality teachers, scarce learning materials, and are heavily overcrowded. Within these minority and low-income populations, a metaphor known as a school-to-prison pipeline occurs, a process in which students that are predicted to be less successful are pushed out of the education system and into the criminal justice system through disciplinary policies and practices enforced by police officers on school campus and are tracked on academic and criminal records. These zero-tolerance policies prescribe exclusionary discipline, such as in or out of school suspension, for minor misconducts. In fact, 95% of the total 3.3 million children suspended from school each year were done so for nonviolent offenses, such as breaking the dress code or just disruptive behavior. This increased suspension forces students to spend less time spend time away from the learning environment, resulting in long-term negative educational impacts, such as lowered academic achievement and standardized test scores, and increased presence in the juvenile justice system and high school dropouts. To compare disparities, Black students are expelled 3 times more frequently than their white counterparts, and those that are expelled are 2 times more likely to drop out. It is the teachers, however, that are responsible for giving out these suspensions. It is the racial prejudices of these teachers in determining a student's worth that results in skewed rates. It is the teachers who decide that rather than putting in extra effort to help these students, give up on them and push them aside.
To build off of what Mia mentioned about the zero-tolerance policy, students of color face the most negative impacts of the harsh regulations found in the American school system. This graph shows that the students of color experience more days in suspension than the rest of the student body, and male students in particular spend more than 2 times more days in suspension than the non-minority population. So as a result, these students have higher probability of becoming incarcerated as youth. Furthermore, this graph shows that based on data from 2017 by the National Center of Juvenile Justice, it shows that people of color ages 20 and below are confined at a rate of over 4 times more than the white population.
Police biases are a very dangerous thing in the criminal justice system due to the fact that police biases result in directly who will be incarcerated and who will not be incarcerated. Police biases are shown in a study of pullovers that the Sato Institute conducted. They showed that people of color who were pulled over 2 or more times were 27%, where only white people being pulled over 2 or more times were 18%. The Stanford research team furthermore elaborated on this study by using over 200,000 police pullovers over the 50 United States. And in each 50 states, they use 100 pullover cases in each state. Over the last 10 years, they have conducted this study, and this represents the Black population of America. And in each of the states represented, they are around the 10 to 20 pullovers per year. If you look at California exactly, there's a 25 pullovers in the year 2013. Where if you look at the same graph for white people, in the year 2013, there are only 15 pullovers. Going back to the graphs, there is a way higher rate of African American pullovers by police than white pullovers by police. Police biases are also dangerous because they can lead to police violence. It has been noted that police who have biases are more likely to enforce violence on African Americans. In Houston, Texas, there were 267 shooting incidences of African Americans, and the homicide reports reported that there is an 106.3% increase in shootings in African Americans than white people.
This is a graph of predicted probability for Black people who will be going to prison, who have adjusted prison, and Black people versus white people on probation. So Black people statistically are going to prison more and are getting less probation opportunities than white people. And in the courtroom, it is shown that Black jurors may sympathize with Black jurors more than they do with Black jurors sympathize with Black jurors more than Black defendants more than they would with white defendants. So the screening process to be in the jury, there's some bias to see who goes in.
Although we cannot change the generational prejudices ingrained in the mindsets of American society, we can determine how their biases affect the lives of other people. This can be accomplished by the enforcement of thorough screening procedures to those in positions of authority, such as school teachers, police officers, and court officials. These procedures include in-depth background checks, psychological evaluations, and the examination of one's presence on social media.
With these procedures, though, the number of available applicants will be slimmed down, and this can be proved to be problematic in low-income areas and the schools there, as they already face overcrowding, lack of resources, and low funding. So understaffing will just prove to further decrease the quality of education in these areas. Also, the Fourth Amendment states that the right of the people to be secured in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. So in regards to the examination of social media presence, one's Fourth Amendment right could be violated as the process does invade the applicant's privacy and is considered to search what is their personal information. Thank you.
We guys just slide together so I can ask you questions. We're going to start with Olivia and just go right down the line, okay? Olivia, if you had a fifth person on your team, what perspective would they have that would have made a useful contribution to this?
If we had a fifth person as a team member, we would have added the perspective of direct inmate statistics between African Americans and white people. That could include how they're treated in prison directly by cops, and also just privileges that they experience within the prison atmosphere.
All right, thanks. Mia, is there an argument that was in one of your peers' research that you decided to not use, and then if so, why didn't you use it?
Yes, in Annika's argument regarding the bias seen within the courtroom, there was a chart determining the different probation status, whether a given bail or not, depending on Black or white people. We decided to remove this as it seemed to be more of a problem over the distribution of wealth in the U.S. and socioeconomic status that couldn't be solved by a solution.
All right, thank you. When you think about the work that the other three people did, which one had the greatest impact on on the whole presentation, do you think?
I think Mia's had the greatest impact because it really showed because me personally, I didn't know about the school to prison pipeline before we had done research, and I really think it changed my perspective on this entire.
All right. And Annika, if what's a way that your team's solution makes you think differently about the research you conducted?
I think that the solution we came up with to have a screening procedure, I think would help in the courtroom where if we are able to implement the screenings, then we'll know like I can't remember the word, but we'll know like a baseline, that's what it is, a baseline for this is how it should be.